My stepdaughter said, "The greatest gift for my 18th birthday is if you disappear from our family forever." My new wife nodded her real dad will take it from here. So I did exactly that. After selling the house and canceling her college funds and expenses, what I left in the empty house shocked them. My stepdaughter looked me dead in the eye on her 18th birthday and said the greatest gift I could give her was to disappear from their family forever. My wife nodded in agreement. Her real dad will take it from here, she said. So I did exactly that. I sold the house they thought was theirs. I canceled the college fund I'd been building for 12 years. And what I left behind in that empty house absolutely destroyed them both. My name is Trevor Braftoft. I'm 52 years old, and for the past 14 years I thought I was building something real. A family, a life, a future worth protecting. Turns out I was just the ATM machine funding someone else's fairy tale ending. I met Jessica at a charity fundraiser in downtown Portland back in 2010. She was 34 then, recently divorced with a 4-year-old daughter named Madison. Jessica worked in pharmaceutical sales, drove a leased BMW she could barely afford, and had this way of looking at you like you were the only person in the room. When she smiled, you forgot about everything else. When she talked about her struggles as a single mother, you wanted to fix everything for her. I was making good money as a commercial real estate developer. Not wealthy by billionaire standards, but comfortable enough to own a nice house in the suburbs, drive a truck I'd paid cash for, and save aggressively for retirement. I'd been married once before in my 20s, no kids. That marriage ended amicably when we both realized we wanted different things. She wanted adventure and spontaneity. I wanted stability and planning. We split everything down the middle and stayed friends. Jessica seemed different from my ex-wife. She valued security. She talked about wanting to build a stable home for Madison. She said she'd learned from her first marriage that flashy romance mattered less than steady partnership. And I believed every word. Our first date was at a waterfront restaurant where Madison joined us for dessert. She was adorable at 4 years old, all pigtails and missing teeth, telling me about her imaginary friend named Captain Whiskers who lived in her closet. Jessica watched us interact with this grateful expression that made me feel like a hero just for being kind to a kid. We dated for 8 months before I proposed. Jessica cried when I got down on one knee in the same restaurant where we'd had our first date. Madison was there too, holding a sign that said, "Will you be my daddy?" that Jessica had clearly prepared in advance. How could I say no to that? We got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Madison was the flower girl, wearing a white dress that matched Jessica's gown. During the reception, Jessica gave a speech about how I'd rescued them both from uncertainty and gave them a future to believe in. Everyone cried. I felt like the luckiest man alive. The first few years were good, really good. I sold my bachelor pad and bought a 4-bedroom house in a great school district. Big backyard, updated kitchen, the kind of place you could imagine raising a family. Jessica quit her pharmaceutical sales job because the hours were unpredictable and she wanted to be more present for Madison. I supported that decision completely. What good was making money if your family never saw you? Madison called me dad within the first year. Her biological father, Ryan, had been inconsistent with visits and child support. He'd show up for birthdays with extravagant gifts, then disappear for months. Jessica said he was unreliable, immature, more interested in being Madison's friend than her parent. I became the stable presence, the one who helped with homework, attended parent-teacher conferences, coached her soccer team. I loved that kid, genuinely loved her. When she scored her first goal in soccer, I was the one screaming from the sidelines. When she had nightmares, I was the one who sat in her room until she fell back asleep. When she got her first period and was mortified, I was the one who drove to 3 different stores at midnight to find the right products because Jessica was out of town at a conference. I adopted Madison legally when she was 8. Ryan didn't contest it. He'd moved to California by then and had started a new family. The adoption meant Madison could have my last name, could be on my insurance, could inherit from me without complications. Jessica cried happy tears in the courthouse. Madison wrote me a card that said, "You're my real dad now," with a crayon drawing of our family. I started a college fund for Madison the month we got married. Automatic deposits every month, slowly building toward a goal of covering 4 years at a good university. By the time she turned 18, that fund had grown to just over $180,000. I also paid for her braces, her summer camps, her travel soccer fees, her SAT prep courses. Every expense related to Madison, I covered without question or complaint. Jessica and I had our tensions. But what marriage doesn't? She spent money faster than I could track it. Designer handbags, spa days, redecorating the house every 2 years because the style had changed. I'd suggest budgets and she'd get defensive, saying I was controlling. We'd argue, then make up, then repeat the cycle. But I figured that was just marriage. You work through the rough patches. The real problem started about 2 years ago when Madison turned 16. She'd always been a good kid, Polite, hard-working, but something shifted. She became distant. When I'd ask about her day, I'd get one-word answers. When I'd offer to help with homework, she'd say she'd rather figure it out herself. When I'd suggest family movie nights, she'd have plans with friends. Jessica assured me it was normal teenage stuff. She's finding her independence. Jessica would say, "You're taking it too personally." But it felt like more than that. It felt like Madison was actively pulling away from me specifically. Then Ryan started coming around more frequently. He'd moved back to Oregon and had apparently gotten his life together. New job in tech, decent apartment, engaged to a woman who seemed stable. Madison started spending weekends at his place. At first, I thought it was healthy for her to reconnect with her biological father, but the way she'd come home from those visits changed things. She'd talk about how cool Ryan's place was, how he understood her better, how he didn't lecture her about grades or curfews. Jessica would smile and nod like this was all wonderful progress. I'd feel this knot in my stomach that I couldn't quite explain. Last year, Madison started calling me Trevor instead of Dad. The first time it happened, I thought I'd misheard. We were at dinner and she asked Trevor, "Can you pass the salt?" I looked at her confused and she just stared back like it was the most natural thing in the world. Jessica didn't correct her. Nobody else at the table reacted. That night, I pulled Jessica aside. "Did you hear what Madison called me?" I asked. Jessica shrugged. "She's 17, Trevor. She's figuring out her identity. Maybe she feels more comfortable using your first name, but she's called me Dad for 13 years. This feels like she's rejecting me." "You're being oversensitive," Jessica said. "She still loves you. This is just a phase." But it wasn't a phase. Over the next few months, I went from Dad to Trevor in every interaction. And with that name change came a shift in how Madison treated me. I was no longer her father. I was Jessica's husband, the guy who lived in the house and paid the bills. I tried talking to Madison directly about it. "Honey," I said one evening when Jessica was at book club, "did I do something wrong? Why did you stop calling me Dad?" Madison looked up from her phone with this blank expression. "You're not my dad, Trevor. Ryan's my dad. You're just the guy who married my mom." The words hit like a punch to the gut. "But Madison, I adopted you. I've been raising you since you were 4. Legally, I'm your father." She rolled her eyes. "A piece of paper doesn't make you my father. Ryan is my real dad. You're just someone who was there while he got his life together." I sat there trying to process what I was hearing, trying to reconcile this cold stranger with a little girl who used to make me Father's Day cards and tell everyone at school that her dad was the best coach ever. "What about all the years we spent together?" I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. "All the soccer games, the homework help, the late-night talks. That was just you doing what my mom asked you to do," Madison said, returning her attention to her phone. "Don't act like you were doing me some huge favor." I brought it up with Jessica later that night. She sighed like I was the problem. "Trevor, you need to let Madison have her relationship with Ryan. You're acting jealous and possessive." "I'm not jealous. I said I'm hurt. I raised that girl. I loved her like she was my own blood. And now she's acting like none of it mattered." "You knew she had a biological father," Jessica said. "You knew Ryan would always be part of her life. Maybe you built up this fantasy that you could replace him, but that was never realistic." I stared at my wife, seeing a stranger. This woman I'd supported for 12 years, who'd quit her job and lived comfortably on my income, was telling me I'd been delusional about my role in our family. The final explosion came 3 weeks ago on Madison's 18th birthday. We'd planned a big party, invited all her friends and family, rented a space at a nice restaurant downtown. I'd spent weeks coordinating with Jessica to make sure everything was perfect. The decorations, the catering, the photographer. Nothing was too good for Madison's milestone birthday. Ryan showed up at the party with his fiancée, Amber. They brought an envelope that Madison opened right there in front of everyone. Inside were keys to a car, a brand new Honda Civic, white with a red bow on top, parked right outside the restaurant. Madison screamed with excitement and hugged Ryan so hard she lifted him off the ground. Everyone clapped and took photos while Ryan basked in the glory of being the generous dad who gave the big gift. I'd gotten Madison a laptop for college, top-of-the-line MacBook Pro, plus a check for $500 for textbooks, practical gifts, useful gifts, the kind of presents a responsible parent gives. But compared to a car, my gifts looked pathetic, and everyone knew it. Later in the evening, after most of the guests had left, Madison was outside admiring her new car with a group of friends. I was inside settling the bill when Jessica approached me with Ryan and Amber. "Trevor," Jessica said, her voice, that careful tone people use when they're about to say something terrible. "Ryan and I have been talking, and we think it's time to have an honest conversation about the family dynamic." I looked between the three of them, my confusion obvious. "What family dynamic?" "Well," Jessica continued, glancing at Ryan for support, "Madison is 18 now. She's an adult, and she's made it clear that she wants Ryan to be her primary father figure going forward. If you're enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Your support helps me continue bringing you these powerful stories. Now, let's get back to what happened next. Ryan stepped forward, putting his hand on Jessica's shoulder like they were a team. Look, Trevor, you've been great over the years. Really stepped up when I was going through my mess, but Madison's made her choice. She wants me in her life as her dad, and honestly, it might be easier for everyone if you took a step back. I looked at Jessica, waiting for her to defend me to remind them that I'd been the one raising Madison for 14 years. But she just nodded along with Ryan's words. Trevor, Jessica said softly, you have to understand this from Madison's perspective. She's reconnecting with her biological father. That bond is important. And with her going to college soon, maybe it's time to acknowledge that your role in her life is changing. Changing how? I asked, my voice tight. I'm her legal father. I've supported her entire childhood. I've paid for everything. Does that just stop mattering because Ryan decided to show up again? Madison appeared in the doorway. Must have come in from the parking lot. She'd clearly heard the conversation. This is exactly why we need to have this talk, she said, crossing her arms. Trevor, you act like you're owed something because you spent money on me. But nobody asked you to do that. Mom could have managed without you. The words kept coming, each one worse than the last. You were just convenient, Madison continued. A stable income, a nice house in a good neighborhood. But that doesn't make you my father. Ryan is my dad. He always has been. You were just there filling space until he could be the parent I deserved. Jessica reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Trevor, honey, Madison's just trying to be honest about her feelings. We think it would be best for everyone if you gave us some space. Let Ryan and Madison build their relationship without complications. What kind of space? I asked. Jessica exchanged a look with Ryan, then turned back to me. The house, Trevor. We think you should move out. Let Ryan move in. He and Madison need time to reconnect properly, and it's just awkward with you here. The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too hot. My wife and stepdaughter were asking me to leave my own house so Jessica's ex-husband could move in, and they were acting like this was a reasonable request. This is my house, I said slowly. I bought it. I pay the mortgage. You want me to just hand it over? Jessica sighed. That's the problem right there. Everything is about money with you. This is supposed to be about what's best for Madison. Madison stepped closer, her face cold and determined. You want to know what would be best for me, Trevor? The greatest gift you could give me for my 18th birthday is if you disappeared from our family forever. Just sign whatever papers you need to sign and let us move forward without you. I looked at my wife, waiting for her to correct Madison, to tell her she'd gone too far. Instead, Jessica nodded. Her real dad will take it from here, Trevor. You've done enough. We'll always be grateful for your support, but Madison's made her choice. Ryan and I need to co-parent her through college now. You're just going to complicate things. Something inside me went very cold and very clear in that moment. I looked at each of them. Madison with her entitled sneer. Jessica with her guilty but determined expression. Ryan trying to look sympathetic while clearly thrilled about this development. Fine, I said quietly. If that's what you want, I'll disappear. Madison smiled like she'd won. Good, that makes everything easier. I'm moving into Ryan's apartment next week anyway for the summer before college starts. By the time I come back for visits, I don't want to see you here. I nodded slowly, already calculating in my head. The house was solely in my name. Jessica had never contributed to the mortgage. The college fund was in my name as custodian. Every asset we'd accumulated during the marriage was tied to my income. I'll take care of everything, I told them. You won't have to worry about me being in the way. Jessica looked relieved. Thank you for being understanding about this. I know it's hard, but you'll see this is better for everyone. We can still be friends, Trevor. This doesn't have to be ugly. The drive home that night was the longest of my life. Not because of distance, but because I was processing 14 years of memories through a completely different lens. Every sacrifice I'd made, every expense I'd covered, every time I'd put Madison's needs before my own wants, all of it had meant nothing. I was being discarded like an outdated appliance. When we got home, Jessica went straight to bed, exhausted from the party. Madison was still out with friends, probably celebrating her new car and her successful removal of the inconvenient stepfather. I sat in my home office and started making calls. First call was to my real estate attorney, Stephen, who I'd known for 15 years through various property deals. Steve, I said when he answered, I need to sell my house fast and I need to make sure the sale is ironclad. The next morning, I woke up before Jessica and started executing my plan. I had spent the night working through the legal and financial implications of everything. Oregon is not a community property state. Assets acquired before marriage or through inheritance remain separate property. The house had been mine before Jessica and I married. She had no legal claim to it. The college fund was in my name as custodian for Madison's benefit. But since Madison, who was now 18, I could legally close that account and move the funds elsewhere. The adoption gave Madison rights to inherit from me if I died without a will, but it didn't give her rights to my assets while I was alive. I called my financial advisor, Patricia, who managed my retirement accounts and investments. Patricia, I need to make some changes to my accounts. I'm removing Madison as beneficiary from everything. I also need to close the college fund and transfer those assets into my retirement portfolio. There was a pause on the line. Trevor, she said carefully, that's a significant decision. Are you sure you want to do this? Madison's counting on that money for school. She made it clear yesterday that I'm not her father, I replied. She told me to disappear from their family. I'm simply honoring her request and protecting my assets accordingly. Patricia was quiet for a moment, then said she'd start processing the paperwork immediately. Next, I contacted 3 real estate agents I'd worked with professionally over the years. Within 2 hours, I had competitive market analyses showing my house could sell for $740,000 in the current market. I listed it that afternoon with the agent who promised the fastest sale. The listing went live by evening. Jessica noticed something was wrong when she saw the for sale sign go up in our yard 2 days later. She came into my office where I was reviewing offers. We'd already received 3 above asking price. Trevor, what is that sign doing in our yard? She demanded. I looked up from my laptop. I'm selling the house just like you asked. We never asked you to sell the house, Jessica said, her voice rising. We asked you to move out so Ryan could move in. This is my house, Jessica. I bought it before we married. You have no legal claim to it. I'm selling it and using the proceeds for my retirement. You want me to disappear from your family? Fine, but I'm not funding your lifestyle while I do it. Jessica's face went white. You can't be serious. Where are we supposed to live? That's between you and Ryan, I said calmly. I'm sure between his tech job and your pharmaceutical sales experience, you can find something affordable. But I thought I quit pharma to be there for Madison. Jessica protested. You said you supported that decision. I did support it. I agreed. When I thought we were building a family together, but Madison made it clear I'm not her family. You agreed with her. So now you can support yourself. Jessica started crying. Trevor, please don't do this. We can work this out. Madison was just being emotional. She didn't mean those things. She meant every word, I said. And so did you. You told me Ryan would take it from here, so let him take it. Take all of it. Over the next week, chaos erupted in the house. Madison found out about the sale when one of her friends saw the listing online and sent it to her. She came storming into my office screaming about how I was ruining her life. You're selling our house? Madison yelled. Where am I supposed to come home to during college breaks? You told me you were moving in with Ryan, I reminded her. You said you didn't want to see me here. I'm just making sure that happens by ensuring there's no here to come back to. But this is my home, she cried. I grew up here. All my memories are here. Funny, I said, not looking up from my computer. When you wanted me gone, this was just a house. Now that you're losing it, suddenly it's your home full of precious memories. Which is it, Madison? She had no answer for that. Jessica tried a different approach. She came to me with a proposal. Trevor, what if we put the house in both our names? Then Madison could inherit it someday, and you could still leave if that's what you want. No, I said simply. The house is already under contract. Closing is in 3 weeks. The buyers were a young couple with twins, paying cash, no financing contingencies. They wanted a quick close, and I was happy to oblige. Jessica's parents got involved, calling me to lecture about family obligations and Christian values. Her father, who'd always been cordial but distant, suddenly had strong opinions about my responsibilities as a husband and stepfather. You made commitments, Trevor, he said on a speakerphone call with Jessica sitting right there. You can't just abandon your family because of some teenage drama. I didn't abandon anyone, I replied. I was asked to disappear. I was told I wasn't family. I'm simply respecting their wishes and protecting my financial future. Jessica's mother chimed in. But what about Madison's college? You've been planning for that for years. You can't just take that away from her. The college fund was my gift to a daughter who wanted me in her life, I explained. Madison made it clear she has a father and it's not me. Ryan can fund her education. That's what fathers do. The real meltdown came when Madison received the letter from my attorney formally notifying her that the college fund had been closed and the assets redistributed. She was at Ryan's apartment when she opened it and immediately called Jessica in hysterics. Madison and Ryan showed up at the house that evening demanding to speak with me. I met them in the living room where boxes were already packed for my move. You can't do this, Ryan said, trying to sound authoritative. That money was for Madison's education. You promised to support her through college. I promised to support my daughter, I corrected. Madison informed me she's not my daughter. She has a father, and apparently it's you. So now you get to be the father who pays for college. Congratulations. But I don't have that kind of money saved up, Ryan protested. I'm just getting back on my feet financially. That sounds like a problem for Madison's father to solve, I said. Which again, you've all made clear is you, not me. Madison was crying now. Real tears. Not the manipulative kind. Trevor, please. I'm sorry for what I said. I was just upset. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did, I said quietly. You meant every word. You wanted me gone. You wanted Ryan to be your only father. You got exactly what you asked for. Now you're upset because you're realizing that dads who pay for everything don't grow on trees. Jessica jumped in. Trevor, this is cruel. She's just a kid. She made a mistake. She's 18, I reminded them. An adult by legal standards. Old enough to make choices about who she considers family. Old enough to live with the consequences of those choices. The house closed escrow 3 weeks later. I walked away with $680,000 after closing costs and paying off the remaining mortgage. I'd already rented a downtown condo, modern, minimal, no memories. I took only what was mine. Furniture I'd bought before the marriage, my personal items, my office equipment. Everything Jessica had picked out over the years stayed in the house for the new owners to deal with. The day before I moved out, I did one final thing. Left an envelope on the kitchen counter addressed to Madison. Inside was a letter and a check for $5,000. The letter read, Madison, this check represents roughly 1 month of the expenses I covered for you over 14 years. 1 month out of 168. It's yours to keep. No strings attached. Consider it a graduation gift from someone who was never your father, just someone who is there. The remaining $175,000 from your college fund is now securing my retirement. Your real father can fund your education. That's what real fathers do. You wanted me to disappear, so I'm disappearing. But I'm taking with me everything I brought to this family, which turns out was everything that mattered. I hope the car was worth it. Trevor, I moved out on a Tuesday. Didn't say goodbye to Jessica or Madison. Just loaded my belongings into a moving truck and drove away from 14 years of my life. My phone started blowing up immediately. Text messages from Jessica begging me to reconsider. Voicemails from Madison crying and apologizing. Emails from Jessica's family calling me heartless and vindictive. I blocked them all, changed my number, made it clear through my attorney that all communication needed to go through legal channels. 3 months later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Jessica and Ryan had moved in together into a rental house on the other side of town. Apparently, neither of them could afford anything close to the neighborhood where we lived. Madison had enrolled at community college instead of the university she'd been planning on. Ryan's tech company had downsized and he'd been laid off, so money was tight. The acquaintance asked if I felt bad about how things turned out. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. They made their choices based on what they thought they wanted. I made mine based on protecting what I'd built. That's how consequences work. 6 months after I moved out, I ran into Madison at a coffee shop downtown. She was working behind the counter, wearing an apron, taking orders. When she saw me, her face went pale. Trevor, she said quietly when I reached the register. I didn't know you came here. I just moved to the neighborhood, I replied. Small coffee, black. She made my drink with shaking hands, and when she handed it to me, she said, I'm sorry for everything. I know, I said, taking the coffee. But sorry doesn't pay for college, does it? I left a generous tip and walked out. I didn't look back. That's where my story ends. Or maybe where it really begins. I'm not the villain in this story, no matter how Jessica and her family try to paint me. I was a man who gave 14 years of his life to raising a child who wasn't his blood, who worked hard to provide stability and opportunities, who loved that little girl like she was my own. And when that girl became an adult and decided I was disposable, I protected myself. Some people say I should have been the bigger person. Should have continued supporting Madison despite her rejection. Should have understood that teenagers say hurtful things they don't mean. But here's what I learned. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Madison showed me I was never her father, just a wallet with a pulse. Jessica showed me I was never her partner, just a paycheck with benefits. I'm 52 years old, financially secure, and finally living my life on my own terms. I date when I want to. I travel when I feel like it. I invest in my future instead of someone else's. And I sleep just fine at night knowing that I gave that family every opportunity to appreciate what they had. They chose to throw it away. If you found this story valuable, please share it with others who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below about a time when standing up for yourself cost you a relationship. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary strength. Because everyone has something they're carrying. Sometimes it's the weight of being taken for granted. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to walk away.